a lot of people are not sort of following where I think the Trump team and Giuliani, in particular, Giuliani's team, is going to try and keep President Trump in the White House. And that's what I want to talk about, is the path that they're going. It would not be unheard of to see them get successful or be successful in their effort to keep the president in the White House. And so that's what I want to talk about. It's certainly an uphill battle, but it's a very interesting way of approaching it. So with that said, I'll just go into it.
You can find me on most social media by my name, Ann Elizabeth, or Smart Conservatives, or Ann Elizabeth SC. Tonight we have Eric Early on. Eric is most well known for his congressional race against the notorious compulsive and pathological liar, Adam Schiff, which Eric, as a community, we want to congratulate you for an incredible run. We as a community absolutely adore you, and we were with you all the way. And Eric also had a run in the general for Attorney General of California. And also he has been named Super Lawyer of the Year since 2005. So Eric, thank you for coming back to talk about the election. The other day, we talked about the election. It was somewhat, we weren't sure what was going to happen. And this time you think that you have found a clear path. Let's talk about it.
Well, Ann, what I wanted to talk about, thank you for having me, was that, a lot of people are not sort of following where I think the Trump team and Giuliani, in particular, Giuliani's team, is going to try and keep President Trump in the White House. And that's what I want to talk about, is the path that they're going. It would not be unheard of to see them get successful. Or be successful in their effort to keep the president in the White House. And so that's what I want to talk about. It's certainly an uphill battle, but it's a very interesting way of approaching it. So with that said, I'll just go into it. The media, the mainstream media's focus has been on, as so many people watching this know, the mainstream media's been saying no evidence, no evidence, no evidence, no evidence. Where's the evidence? They've been focusing on the lawsuits that are being dismissed. The mainstream media is not focusing on the lawsuits that are in fact not being dismissed and are going forward. And the mainstream media is completely ignoring the fact that there has been a lot of evidence gathered. Anytime somebody puts a statement under oath based on their personal knowledge, that's evidence. They've gathered scores and scores of statements under oath called declarations or affidavits. Anytime somebody gets up at one of these hearings that we've been seeing and watching on television, where somebody speaks about their personal experience with some sort of wrongdoing going on with the voting and the vote counting and all of that stuff, that is evidence. So there's plenty of evidence being gathered. However, some amount of evidence that's going to be needed to overthrow some of these elections is not. They're just not showing sufficient evidence at this point. There's a reason for that. I've been an attorney 27 years and run a great law firm. Usually these cases, they'll take a year, 2 years, 3 years. One of the main reasons lawsuits last so long is because us lawyers do what's called discovery, where we're out there looking for evidence. We're taking depositions, we're interviewing people, we're gathering documents, we're subpoenaing documents, we're sending out written discovery. That all takes a long time, and finding evidence takes even longer and is always much harder when you're dealing with people on the other side who are willing to lie, cheat, hide, destroy documents, etc. And so I have little doubt, frankly, that if Giuliani's team had a year or two to gather evidence, they would be able to gather, mountains of very powerful evidence to show the fraud that would be needed to turn this election in favor of the president. But as many people know, Giuliani's team and the president are dealing under the deadlines set by the Constitution and the various statutes out there, and so we need rulings right away. And so the focus has to be switched to what I believe the Giuliani team is really focused on, which can take much quicker, which would not require large, long-winded lawsuits, and would not require voluminous amounts of evidence that it would take to go the other way. And that's this. It's not surprisingly enough, it's not the popular vote that elects the president. It's the electors in the Electoral College. And that's where the focus of this is. And it's going to take a bit of a while to explain this, but this is where, by watching Giuliani and what he's been doing and his team, I'm quite convinced this is the way they're trying to do this. And it works as follows. Let's take the state of Pennsylvania, for example. If you look at the vote count in Pennsylvania right now, if you believe the vote count, I don't, it says that the majority of the voters voted for Joe Biden. Normally, the way these things work is the state, all the electoral votes in that state would then go to Joe Biden. And that's where the mainstream media is getting their electoral vote counts, right? They're looking at what they say the numbers are in the states in terms of the voters, and they're saying, okay, Biden won Pennsylvania, Biden won Michigan, Biden won this, and they're just they're doing their electoral vote count that way. But the way it really works is, it is the legislature of every state, so in this case, Pennsylvania, selects the electors that then get sent to the Electoral College. And there are 17 states in the country, one of them is Pennsylvania, where the electors do not have to vote at the Electoral College, and I believe they're meeting I think it's January 7th in Washington. They do not have to follow the majority vote. And so here, where there are huge questions in Pennsylvania, for example, in terms of what the majority vote should actually be, I think that the legislature in Pennsylvania, which is thankfully a Republican-controlled legislature, is going to send electors to D.C. to vote for Trump, to give their electoral votes for Trump. My cat just joined me again.
I love that cat.
Cat likes being on TV. To give the electoral vote to Trump at the Electoral College. In other words, just the opposite of what all of the media has used to calculate the electoral votes for Biden, because all the media has given all of Pennsylvania's electoral votes to Biden as far as Biden's total count there. And, along these lines, well, let me just say this, along these lines, this is why Giuliani went to Pennsylvania about a week ago. He held about a 3-hour-long hearing. I watched the whole hearing. He brought all kinds of people in to testify about wrongdoing they had witnessed, wrongdoing they had experienced with the vote count, with hard drives that had thousands of votes on that disappeared, about problems with the computer software that was being used. And I'm quite convinced Giuliani did that to give the Republican legislature in Pennsylvania the ammunition it needs to send electors to Washington to vote their votes for Trump instead of for Biden. This is all perfectly constitutional. And so what's very instructive and informative is if you watch where this Giuliani, what I'm calling the Giuliani tour, is going. Well, he's going to the battleground states where there are Republican majorities in the legislature, and he's going to states where electors go to DC and they do not have to follow however the majority of the votes came out. So he's going to states and giving them ammunition, the legislatures, to appoint electors to send to DC and vote for Trump rather than Biden, notwithstanding what the alleged vote count was in that state. And let me just throw couple other interesting facts at you. If this process can flip Pennsylvania, and I think it's quite possible it can flip Pennsylvania for the reasons I've just said, then the president's team only needs, as I understand it, to flip one more state, Arizona, Nevada, Michigan, one of those other states. And then what would happen at the Electoral College, which, as I said, I think it's January 7th, is that neither the president nor Biden would have the magic number of 270 electoral votes,
Right.
which is a great thing, and I can explain why in a second. So if you want me to keep going there,
Yeah,
Pam?
I'm going to ask you some stuff at the end. I've been writing it down.
Are you following me as I'm going through this?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's undeniable to me that he won those states. I think it would be warranted that the electorates would flip.
Just remember, this is an uphill battle, but it's clear. It's a much clearer way to go about keeping the president in the White House
Yes.
than trying to file lawsuits that are going to require 1, 2, 3 years to gather the evidence for. So let me go to the next step.
Yep.
Let's say the electors go to the Electoral College. Let's say Pennsylvania votes their electoral votes for Trump rather than Biden. So those electoral votes come out of the total number that the mainstream media has attributed to Biden, and they go to the number of electoral votes that the president has. And
Yeah.
let's say they flip one other state that's in this group of states we're talking about. It's very possible that in that process, and mind you, they'll be going crazy on the other side when this is going on, the Electoral College, but it's all perfectly constitutional.
Yeah.
Let's say neither the president nor Biden reach that magic 270 number by virtue of what's going on. This is another place where it gets interesting. Then it's up to the House of Representatives, all pursuant to the Constitution, to vote for who becomes the president. And, you know, the first time I heard that, I was concerned because the Democrats have a majority in the House of Representatives, right? But here's another fabulous thing about the way this was all drawn up by the founders oh so long ago.
Yeah.
In this particular kind of vote that would happen,
Yeah.
each state only gets one vote.
Yeah.
And so the states that have a majority of Republican congressional representatives in them will vote for Donald Trump. And the states that have a majority, like California, that have a majority of Democrat congressional representatives in them will vote for Biden. And the great thing is there are either 26 or 27 of the 50 states that have a majority of Republican congressional representatives over Democrats. So if this vote goes to the Congress along the lines of what I'm saying, the president will win the presidency by a vote of 27 to 23 in the U.S. Congress.
Yeah.
It's all completely constitutional.
Yeah.
If that happens, we can assume that the far left is going to go absolutely insane. Now, why the mainstream media is not focusing on this right now, you know, you can only assume they either know about it and it's the last thing they want to talk about publicly as a possibility, or they don't really get it. So I'll leave that up to people's imaginations as to why we're not hearing about this. But this is very real. And as I said, there's little doubt in my mind just by following Giuliani's team and his actions and where they're going and what they're doing and what kind of presentations they're making. This is what they are seeking to make happen.
Yep. I think that you're totally right on. I actually had mentioned this scenario with Hillary Clinton when she said not to concede under any circumstance to Joe Biden, because I thought that that's what they were. When Joe Biden said, we're going to have to remove him from the White House, that was the first thing. I said, what do they have going on right now? That was just very suspicious to me that he would say such a thing. But then Hillary came out and she said publicly, Joe Biden, do not concede under any circumstance. And I think they had this up their sleeve as well. So let me ask you this. The electorates, if that's the case, what's to say they already don't have the electorates in the bag? Or do we get to still find any electors that we want in those states? Are there pre-chosen electors in those states, or do they get to choose them now?
Well, you know, that's a good question. And I don't know how every state has done it and whether they've already chosen or not chosen, but it really comes down to the states, the battleground states that have Republican control of their legislatures.
Yes.
Because it's the legislatures pursuing, it's the state legislatures that the United States Constitution controls over these kind of issues. And so
Mhm.
the state legislatures make their own rules and their own statutes. And as I said, the state legislatures appoint the electors that get sent out to DC and for the Electoral College. And presumably, if the Republican controlled legislatures in some of these battleground states can be convinced to cause their electors to vote along these lines, um, I would imagine they'll be able to take care of the problem of whether or not electors have already been appointed or not.
Yeah, because I think that any electors with the coup that we see going on right now, any electors that have been chosen, if they're going to go, I would think they'd already be dirty, I guess.
I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens, especially as we get closer to the Electoral College. You know, I don't know if what I described has ever happened before in American history, but again, I don't know if we've ever had this level of very apparent voter fraud in American history. So it's times like these where you have those other ways to determine who the president is.
Can I ask you some questions about otherwise?
Go for it.
Let me see if anybody's writing anything on the community forums, if they have any questions. So someone's asking, what about, oh, thank you. What about how Sidney Powell's part in this? She's kind of focusing on the project right now, it seems like.
Let me tell you something. I'm a fan of Sidney Powell. She's, of course, having her character destroyed by the mainstream media, just like Giuliani has. That's what they do. We all know this. The mainstream media, anybody that poses a threat to the Democrat effort to take over things, the mainstream media just automatically goes into a character assassination campaign, which they've tried to do with Sidney Powell, which they've done with Rudy, or try to do with Rudy. Sidney Powell is a former federal prosecutor. She knows what she's doing, and her focus appears to be on the software and the hardware and software technology that's being used throughout this country to take in votes. People vote on these machines and such, and she's focusing largely on the manipulation and, frankly, the changing of what appear to be hundreds of thousands of votes by computers, by people in control of these computers, Dominion software, and there's another one called Smartmatic. And so, listen, I think those computers and the people in control of those computers, the cat just bit me. The people
Stop talking and pay attention to me.
I don't think she where's betting her. The people in control of those computers, that is frankly one of the biggest threats to the nation, these computers. We've got to get them out of our voting systems. And Sydney is all over that. And there's all kinds of stuff I'm reading and hearing about what's going on there. But to be able to prove that kind of case, to be able to dig into, do the digging that's going to be needed to get to the bottom of the fraud and the massive vote theft, frankly, by these computer systems is going to take more than a month. And so I frankly hope that Sydney keeps going to dig and get to the bottom of that. For example, right here in LA County, I'm incredibly concerned about counting errors here and things that very possibly were done. And we have a Smartmatic software program here and hardware system that is just in the wrong hands. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of votes can be changed at the snap of a finger.
Mm-hmm.
And things are in the wrong hands in the state of California.
Oh, they should.
I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah, I don't either. And I'm actually very convinced that we're a red state. And I think that the supermajority has just honed in on, between making it, taking away the two-party system in the general. I mean, that really creates a supermajority that guarantees them wins in certain areas, no matter what. I mean, I think I had to vote for Feinstein one year because I was trying to keep the crazy radical out. And that was hard for me to pull that lever. But I did. But because there were both Democrats on the ticket, and then they redistrict, right? And
Yeah.
anytime that it looks like it's going to go red, they'll just pull in this little blue area over here. I mean, they changed voting rules on a dime. Ballot harvesting has been made legal. Even if we're a red state at this point, it's almost impossible to change things because they change election laws, and they got the motor
Well,
vehicle law.
I
Everything.
if things go their way, I like to think that there'll be a lawsuit or two coming down the line, even in the state of California. So let's see how that goes.
Getting back to something I want to ask you about your opinion on. So today, Bill Barr came out.
Yeah.
He didn't say that there's no evidence of fraud. So many people are running with that, saying, oh, he said there's no evidence.
Well,
That's not what he said. He said there's not enough evidence. At this point, he said, it's at this point. So it's important to point that out. And I personally think it was strategic because you don't have to have visual evidence yet, do you? Because it's right now, it's not in the courts. So visual evidence would come out once you had a trial. Is that correct?
I've not seen the statement that's being attributed to Barr. I have not seen him say it. I read about it. I don't believe the mainstream media. I want to see the context to it. I've seen some follow-up tweets, I think perhaps even from President Trump, that seem to give more context to what Barr said. And so it does not appear that Barr said that he has seen no evidence of fraud in the election, okay? But of course, that is the way CNN is trying to sell it in big block letters, and the mainstream media and all those liars are trying to sell it. I don't know exactly what Barr said and how he said it, what the context was, but it's very possible that he was saying, I haven't seen sufficient evidence yet to win a case in court. Maybe he was referring to that. I don't know what he was saying, but and if he was saying it that way, I mean, that would be along the lines of what I was talking about earlier, that to get this kind of evidence, where there are tens of millions of mail-in ballots, where more and more it's appearing that so many hundreds of thousands at a minimum were altered in some way, shape, or form, or submitted wrongly in some way, shape, or form, where you're dealing with these software issues that we were mentioning, where you're dealing with these lying sacks on the other side that believe that they're morally superior, and therefore their alleged moral superiority gives them the right to cheat, to do what they believe will lead to a better outcome for all of us. I mean, these people on the other side are that sick, such that they'll lie and do anything and cheat to fall within what they believe is their moral superiority and their morally superior outcome, when in fact these people on the other side are so largely morally inferior. But when you're dealing with gathering evidence under those kind of situations, and that kind of voluminous evidence, and trying to get to the bottom of things, that takes time. So perhaps Bill Barr was alluding to those things, but I don't know. I didn't see what he said, but I am assuming that he didn't say what he is attributed to say in the manner that the CNNs of the world are selling or trying to sell to us.
Okay, so today we had a lot of things going. Nevada has until tomorrow 1 p.m. to check the signatures. President Trump filed in Wisconsin. We have illegal absentee ballots and unlawful claims of illegal voting there, and we have Michigan affidavits came through today.
See, what I'm hoping, Anne, is that all of these things that are being filed, all of these pieces of evidence that are being submitted in support of what's being filed, all of these hearings that are being held, will all be used as part of this grand sort of puzzle that's being put together to convince a couple of these battleground states, Republican legislatures, that there's too much smoke out there. There's clearly too many problems out there to willy-nilly let electors go to DC and simply vote according to what the majority vote in those battleground states supposedly is, when the majority vote, meaning of the people's votes, when those majority votes are so suspect. So I think all these filings are good, and everything Giuliani is doing is good, and it's building up momentum, I believe, to cause hopefully some of these legislatures to send folks to D.C. to vote in the Electoral College, and suddenly, if all goes as it could go, the total electoral count numbers may not be nearly what the CNNs and the MSNBCs and New York Times, LA Times, and all these other crank organizations are telling the American people.
That's great. I
Right?
think Senator Mastriano, has actually filed to
Yeah, I like him. He's the guy in Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, and I think he
Right.
filed to choose new electorates for electors.
There you go. See, I think he's all over it. He's very powerful in Pennsylvania. Thank God. Like I said, they have a powerful Republican majority in Pennsylvania. You combine that with all of the massive problems that obviously occurred in Pennsylvania that have not been proven yet, except in drips and drabs, but that obviously occurred. And, it would not surprise me if when that electoral count is officially counted, if Pennsylvania's electors are with Trump, not Biden, then as I said, you get one other battleground state in there, and this could be very interesting.
It could be. What happens if that happens? And is there anything that the Democrats can do to back it
Well,
up?
yeah, I think they're going to file all kinds of lawsuits as well, and they're going to go crazy. And I think the lunatics, the savages, will be out in the streets and doing what they do. But the good thing about those kind of lawsuits, as distinguished from the kind of lawsuits that require all of this voluminous evidence, those kind of lawsuits can generally be determined, as us lawyers say, as a matter of law. It's the question of, it'll be questions like, did this state legislature have the right to send these electors to D.C.? Did these electors have the right to go against the so-called majority vote and vote for President Trump in the Electoral College? Those are matters of law. And if that gets to the Supreme Court, and I think those kind of lawsuits would eventually end up in the Supreme Court, those can be dealt with relatively quickly. And if they go the way I think they would go, I think at the end of the day, they would favor the president.
They would. I think we got a good shot. And I think it's well deserved, because I think President Trump won, I think they're estimating 410 electoral votes. So he deserves to win. He won. He won by a landslide. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
I think that's pretty much what I had to talk about right now.
Why don't you tell everybody about your radio show?
Oh, well, I've got a couple radio shows. It's awesome. I was never a radio host before I became a candidate. Now I host a couple radio shows, but the main ones that we're going to keep going are there's one on KRLA AM 870 The Answer. It beams all around large chunk of Southern California. It's on Sundays live from 12 noon to 1 p.m. The name of the show is The Early Edition, and you can either get it on your AM radios, or if you go to KRLA's website, they stream all of their radio shows live. So that's a great one. And then I have another show on what's called CRN, Cable Ralph Nancy Digital Talk Radio. And those are also videotaped, and you can get that by going to CRN's website. And then I usually post those shows a day or two after I do them on my Facebook page. I just recorded one right before I came here, and that should be up tomorrow, and I get to talk about all these things. So a lot of good stuff happening out there.
And what you said tonight is truly fascinating, Eric, and thank you once again for coming on and speaking to our community about this with your tremendous expertise. So,
Let me say one other thing, Ann.
Okay.
Not to get anybody jealous, but this Saturday, the White House is having a Christmas celebration, and my wife and I will be there. So we're very blessed. Yeah.
It's so amazing.
That's what will be Wednesday. Hopefully the president will be there. Well, thanks so much for having me.
And we look forward to having you on with your expertise another time. Thank you, communities, and Flip It Red California. And God bless you, Eric, and God bless America. Good night.
Thank you. God bless you too.